Hello, Internet. I'd like to speak as a local San Francisco resident about something that's making national headlines right now, which is the killing of the unarmed black trans activist Banko Brown here in San Francisco by a Walgreens security guard. This footage was released yesterday. There's a full video of the killing, and I'm pretty upset about it. But also, I know sometimes it's hard to get the local scoop. I'm pretty involved in local politics and just local events and voting and all that kind of stuff. So I figured it might be useful to share some of that and kind of make it through some of the static of the mainstream news media. So first, I'd like to say let's set aside for a second the fact that this person was a trans activist and they were black. Obviously, it's related, but let's just, for argument's sake, set that aside because it really shouldn't matter. It does matter, but it shouldn't. And I'd like to ask some very sensible questions. First off, why does Walgreens have armed security guards that are capable of lethal force? That's my first question. I didn't know this before this happened. I've been to that Walgreens on Market Street plenty of times. I have never seen any cause to have armed lethal force security there. It's concerning. They don't sell fentanyl and heroin at Walgreens. They have a pharmacy, and I've never heard of instances where somebody's broken into the pharmacy. Those are highly secured, and the security guard is nowhere near the pharmacy anyway. They're by the front door to catch shoplifters. Is that now the crime for shoplifting? A public execution? Seems to be the case here. The district attorney's office, Jenkins, the new district attorney, is refusing to press charges against Michael Anthony, who shot and killed Banko Brown while they were leaving a Walgreens. But I'll give more context on that in a second. Just want to focus on some of these very sensible questions. Why are there armed security at a Walgreens? What statistics are there to support that? Even if there's shoplifting, again, why does it have to be armed? I've not heard of gangs of, mafia armed robbers coming into Walgreens to steal the condoms and Jolly Ranchers, or whatever, rob the cash register. This is not a thing in this city. It's not a problem. So why? That's question number one. Question number two, what kind of training does a Walgreens security guard capable of lethal force have? Not a police officer. And I'd be really curious to know what kind of training they have, because if you look at the video, this person looks very untrained in every regard, very untrained. And so argument one, why do they have lethal weapons at all? But if you say, hey, it's for safety, well, then what kind of training do they have? That's the second question. Third, of course, is what kind of accountability is there? The police department has an accountability process. It is far from perfect, but there is some oversight. Voters have passed some legislation for some oversight, and they are a public entity, right? So if you're capable of distributing lethal force, you should at least be a public entity under the umbrella of government and public oversight, because then there is some oversight. There can be some oversight. Legislation can be passed. Things can be done. We are talking about a private security guard, right? There's no government or public oversight of that. And so again, it really raises the question, why should private security be capable and have capability for lethal force? This also, in my opinion, extends to other places in San Francisco. This is becoming very disturbingly common to see armed, full on like paramilitary gear security guards. I mean, they're like private militia at this point, outside every marijuana dispensary in the city. This is really, really common. And it's really disturbing. They're not friendly. They're not nice. You're just going down the street. I'm going down the street in my wheelchair or whatever. And there's some paramilitary dude, with his big gun in his holster and body armor and stuff. And you're just like, this doesn't feel safe. This doesn't feel welcoming. This doesn't feel like the community that it used to feel like. And so we're seeing this locally here in San Francisco, and I'm sure in other parts of the country, this creeping of sort of a military vibe in our communities. It's really not cool, and it's really not friendly, or not. It doesn't make me feel safe, right? What happens if there's a totally legitimate reason to discharge a firearm at a marijuana dispensary or a Walgreens? I can't think of one, but let's say there was, right? I'm going down the street in my wheelchair. I don't want to be in the crossfire. I don't want to be a civilian casualty. Like, I don't want my city to be a war zone, right? It shouldn't have to be that way. The levels of like petty crime do not justify this severity of a response, especially with regards to lethal force. We have police stations littered throughout the city. They're very common. We have one in the Mission. We have one in the TL. Where this took place, there is plenty of police. They respond fast here. Like, if you have an actual violent crime happening, police show up really fast. They also show up really fast if you see a homeless person on a park bench. But they show up really fast because they have a huge budget in this city. Well over, I believe last time I checked, it was in the 700 million for the next couple of fiscal years that the mayor approved last budget cycle. It's always being increased. The combination of the sheriff and the police department, it's a massive budget. So they have resources, right? And some of that can be good. They can respond quickly when something happens, as they do, right? And so it's not like, you see situations where sometimes you need to have private security or armed personnel when police aren't available, when police aren't showing up. Not the case here. Not the case in San Francisco at all. At all. So I don't see a justification for this militarization, this lethal force administering of security guards at a Walgreens. The crime for shoplifting should not be execution. We have a court process. Banko Brown, I'll go into one more thing and then I'll get into some of the details of the incident. One more thing that's important to note is Jenkins is a new district attorney who was not elected during a normal election cycle. Let me say that again. This district attorney, who is refusing to press charges on what looks like a murder, let's just call it a killing, is not someone who was elected by the people during a normal election cycle. Very important. We had a district attorney who was elected during a normal election cycle named Chesa Bodine. He was elected in 2020 and sort of on the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, came into office as a reformer, someone who would hold unarmed killings, under a bigger microscope, and reform things that weren't working well in the city. And he did that. And he was, in my opinion, a very, very good district attorney. And one of the things he did, for example, was he blew the whistle on the police were using, maybe by accident, I don't know, but they were using DNA from victims of sexual assault who had taken rape kits when they had been assaulted. And the police were putting that into a database, for all of time. And so there was a case where someone, had taken a rape kit like 5 years ago, and the police were trying to use that as evidence for a current investigation. And Chesa Boudin said, this is going on, this is really screwed up, and I will not prosecute that. Makes sense to me. When somebody comes in because they're a victim of violence, they should not have to worry. They should have 0% chance that what they give, a blood test or whatever else, will be used against them in the future. That is something that victims of assault should never have to worry about. That is the point of having supportive services for any person who's a victim of a crime. You don't use a victim's DNA against them, especially for like years and years later. Really, really inappropriate. So I'm really glad they blew the whistle on that. They did a lot of other things for the city, but ultimately what happened was there was a campaign against them pushed by moneyed interests, people that didn't like that he was a reformer. And they used the COVID pandemic as a strategy because we had seen and continue to see an uptick in violent, assaults against the Asian American community and the Chinese American community here in San Francisco. It's gone down a little bit, but it's still really bad, right? And a lot of that has to do with the former administration of our federal government making claims that this pandemic that we're in was all China's fault, and it's the China virus and this, that, and the other, right? And they've set this thing into motion where people, mostly white people, are blaming China and then somehow drawing that laterally to all Chinese people or and then even further, all Asian people, that this pandemic or problems in society are somehow their fault. It's a hell of a stretch. And of course, it's not appropriate. And so we had seen an uptick in assaults and crimes against Asian American communities here. And Chesapeake was prosecuting those. He was handling those well. But the media was finding, and the moneyed interests were finding cases to try to give only partial facts of the case, to be like, look, Chesapeake's not prosecuting these Asian American hate crimes. You have to look at whose interest is being served there. One, why would a reformer who comes into office not prosecute Asian hate crimes? It makes no sense. It's entirely within his platform and what he stood for. Two, who stands to gain by spreading those theories? People that don't want the reforming. Largely Republicans, right-wing elements. I don't want to say all Republicans, but some. And moneyed interests. Maybe the police union. I don't know. And so they basically orchestrated a Republican recall. And this was the third election cycle. These are not real elections that people even know about a lot of the time. And it was the third one in a single year. This was last winter. 3 times. I almost didn't vote. I was like, what the hell? Why are we voting 3 times in a year? So by the third time that it came around, no one even knew what was going on. No one even knew that they were supposed to be voting. And it was something abysmal. I think it was 24%, maybe even less of the local vote to recall Chesa Boudin. We have a Republican population in San Francisco. They say it's around 7%. It's probably quite a bit higher. But that doesn't take much, right? If you have 7% Republicans and you have, you get some campaigns going to confuse some independents or some libertarians or some Democrats, and you can out anyone, doesn't matter what they're doing. When you have 3 times you're voting in a single season like that, that's crazy. So that's what happened. And we lost our really good district attorney. And we got this new one, Jenkins, who is, this tough on crime, right? Which really means tough on the homeless and not coming up with real solutions to crime, like rehabilitation services, like shelter programs, but just saying, let's put them in jail. Let's get them at the, let's get them off the streets, and the crime, it will go away. We just need to put it into prisons. I think we all know prisons don't do a great job of rehabilitating people. Um, and it's not a great solution. It really isn't. Um, People come out of prison, they don't normally have access to jobs and resources, and a lot of times they fall back into the same cycles because it's the same causes. It's poverty, it's trauma, it's unavailability of resources and community, lack of any kind of social safety net or training, right? Like job rehabilitation stuff. And it's the same cycle starts all over again. You end up on the streets, you're getting abused, people are, violent towards you, you're getting harassed every day, you can't sleep. When you can't sleep, you go crazy. Like if you can't sleep for days and days at a time, you start hallucinating, you start going into fight or flight mode, you start picking fights with people. It's really, really bad. People need access to sleep. They need access to showers, to bathrooms. These are things that the city is not providing. Or if they are, it's in a very, very small degree. It's not meeting the need at all. Shelters are constantly over flooded, and we don't have enough of the of this of the there's this like program where like a what do you call it, like a trailer will set up in a certain neighborhood to provide showers and bathrooms for people. It's a great program, but it's not being funded very well. And things like that. They just shut down some of the linkage centers. They shut down all the, or not all, but some of the needle exchange programs, which are helping people safely use or get off substances. Which again, all the statistics show reduced crime, reduced unsafe, reduced overdoses, reduced all the bad stuff, right? The data is there and it's clear. But the city's not investing in these things. So that's kind of the background of what has been happening here. A lot of the really nice, effective, reforming, good people I've known in City Hall have left, especially during the pandemic. And what we get is a city more and more every day looking like a Republican stronghold, looking like Tennessee or Texas. It really is that bad here. I call it Democrat in name only, dinos, because that's what it's becoming more and more every day. And I say that with a grain of salt because I have friends who are Republicans who I think don't even agree with a lot of these policies. Like I hesitate to even call it Republican, but it is very much a like destroy the social safety net, destroy social services, especially under this current mayor. It's been really, really bad for a long time. And they've eroded so much of the progressive politics, of the liberal values, the LGBTQ, kind of safety values here, the inclusion. I mean, just so much of it has been eroded, and just lots of tax breaks for the mega corporate, tech companies here. And this city policy in recent years, been going on for a while, has made it very clear that their priority is big tech, and it is more police, as much police as possible, more guns on the street, just in the hands of Walgreens security guards and marijuana dispensary places, and while at the same time talking out of their mouth and being like, "Oh, we're all for gun control," it doesn't make any sense. So, and I think Republicans would agree with that. That's bogus. So, that's the framework, right? Now let's talk about what actually happened. You can look in the link below. You'll see in the video what happened. You can make up your own mind. And maybe you should do that first. Pause this video, take a look for yourself, make up your own mind. I'm not here to tell you what you did or didn't see, or do or don't see, right? And I think that's very important for any kind of discussion or journalism. Don't tell people what they did or did not see, right? Let them watch the video, let them make up their own mind. First things first, though, Jenkins, district attorney, tried to block the video from being released. Sketchy. And from what I understand, tried pretty hard. The Board of Supervisors had to intervene and vote to force her to release the video footage of the killing. Doesn't sound very progressive to me. Doesn't sound like a public servant to me. Why would you stop the public from seeing that footage? It's not even like gruesome. And it's not. I mean, you actually can't see like blood or anything. Why would you do that? That's weird, sketchy thing as well. But if you look at the footage, hopefully you've seen it by now. A couple things become clear. One, Banko Brown was probably, I think it's actually been proved, they were shoplifting. Okay. I guess they were homeless at the time, and they were stealing some toiletries and some other stuff. And they got into a physical altercation with the security guard. Now, in one article I read, it said it looked like, oh, Banko Brown bumped into the security guard. I don't believe that for a second. If you've seen Walgreens around here and you've seen people being caught for shoplifting, which I've seen at the Walgreens here, at various Walgreens, you don't bump into a security guard. They call you out. It's a really interesting note, by the way. The video has no audio. Also, a little weird and sketchy. I find it hard to believe that Walgreens isn't recording audio in their stores. And I find it hard to believe that nobody else captured it with audio. But such is the case. And I would like to point out again, if this was a real police officer, there would likely be an audio video recording because they're required to have that. In many cases, they're required to carry a camera. Again, security guard, private security guard distributing lethal force on the public. Not the same public oversight. So we don't have audio as of right now, as of May 16th, at least. And so that's weird thing number one. They're trying to say that Banko Brown bumped into the security guard. I don't believe that. What I think happened is this person was shoplifting. The security guard confronted them, tried to stop them, and maybe didn't do it very nicely. Again, the video does not show the security guard has very good training. They get into a physical altercation. Again, I don't see the security guard being trained very well for this. Their job is to make sure stuff isn't stolen. And their job should also be to call for backup from the police if that's needed, not to get into a fist fight on the floor of a Walgreens from somebody who has no weapon, who is not threatening people, but who is stealing some merchandise, right? Your job is to recover the merchandise and call for backup from actual police, actual authorities, if there's a problem. Not to go throw in, what the hell is he doing in that video? So they're in some like macho scuffle thing going on the floor. And it seems very clear to me this security guard is trying to be all Rambo and put this person in a chokehold, and and again, they don't even handcuff the person, right? Like if somebody is shoplifting, and then even worse, there's let's say Banko Brown was at fault there. Even worse, there's a physical altercation, right? And there's an assault charge possibly. You handcuff the person. Like, why would you have a gun to kill someone and not handcuffs to put on their wrists to detain them? And if you do have handcuffs, why aren't you using them? If do you have a taser? Like what, why aren't you using that? You know what I mean? I'm not saying that these things are necessarily great, but it's like if you're going through proper training as a security guard or a police officer, there are steps that you take, right? Before you just shoot someone and kill them. So that's something else I noticed in the video. But of course, the most disturbing part, and again, I'm not saying Banko Brown shouldn't have been charged for shoplifting and aggravated assault or whatever. That seems very possible. Seems very, but the security guard said, I'm gonna let you go or whatever. They let Banko Brown go away. Banko Brown starts walking out of the store. They're actually out of the store, which means that is no longer even the responsibility of the security guard at that point. They're not on Walgreens property. And that's when Michael Anthony, the security guard, discharged their firearm to kill this person. And in their interview, if you look at one of the videos, there's an interrogation at the police station. Michael Anthony isn't even handcuffed, just murdered someone, isn't even handcuffed when they're being interrogated at the police station. What the hell? And is that what happens when you kill people? You don't even get handcuffed. You just, hey, what's up? That's really weird and really sketchy. And when they're interviewing him, he says, oh, this person was threatening to stab me. Really sounds like baloney. So one, from the account that I read, there was no knife or weapon on Banko Brown at all. Two, if this person was threatening to stab you, you would not let them just walk away. Oh, I'm just going to let you go. I put you in a chokehold, but hey, you're not going to stab me now, right? Nobody does that. You don't do that. This person is shoplifting, aggravated assault, and now you're saying they tried to stab you or wanted to stab you? You handcuff them and you call the police. Even if you don't do that, and I don't think this is the way to go, but you could tase them, right? If someone threatens you, someone's punching you and threatening to stab you, you wouldn't just say, I'm going to let you go now, and then while they're walking away, take out your gun and shoot them. That makes no sense. No sense at all. So there is huge holes in the person's story, in this case, Michael Anthony, who committed the murder. I call it a murder, but let's just say the killing. Trying not to use like sort of definitive terms here. But see where I'm coming from here? How does that make sense? So you put all this together and it's bad. It's a bad soup. It's a really rotten, crooked, bad soup. It's a blight on this city. It's absolutely shameful that this could happen. And you'll notice this entire video, I have said nothing, aside from the very beginning saying, let's not make this relevant. I've said nothing about this person being black or a trans activist. Up to this point, I've not gone into that at all, right? I've just talked about all of the issues in training, in lethal force, in how this scenario even happened, and in how you would properly diffuse this situation were it even, were you to do so correctly, to do so safely. And it's clear that the security guard, Michael Anthony, wasn't interested in that. So now as part of the video, we can ask why. Why was Michael Anthony not interested in handcuffing, detaining this person, and calling the police? Why was their priority not to recover the shoplifted items, which is their job? They're there to protect Walgreens and the general, I don't even know if they're there to protect the general public. They are a private security guard for the Walgreens Corporation. That's it. They're there to recover the stolen goods. And if there's a charge to be made, to call the police so they could put that person in the ringer and bring up charges. That didn't happen. And so again, is the crime for shoplifting, and let's say aggravated assault, is the crime for aggravated assault and shoplifting a public execution? That's screwed up, man. That's really screwed up. You don't get to be judge and jury and executioner all in one go because you're a security guard at a Walgreens. And the fact that our district attorney is not incredibly upset about this and incredibly, and prosecuting this, absolutely they have enough evidence to prosecute. They're saying they don't. They prosecute stuff all the time that is not even caught on video. That doesn't even have somebody dying. Give me a break. This should absolutely be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Michael Anthony should be behind bars tomorrow, if not today. And there should be a complete overhaul and suspension, I think, of Walgreens employing people with the ability to distribute lethal force. And there should be a re-examination, complete overhaul and examination of what training these security guards go through. That's bare minimum. That is bare minimum. I'm not even talking about, large scale reforms here. This is really basic. Take away the gun of the person who killed someone who is unarmed walking away, do some oversight. Like these are really, basic things. So, yeah. And so you can, as far as this person being black and this person being a trans activist, obviously that is going to play a role in how this prosecution takes place or doesn't, as our, I can't even call them a district attorney. They weren't even elected in a regular election cycle. Some third round thing that no one knew about. It's ridiculous. This quasi fake district attorney we have. You're not elected when you're in the third voting cycle of a year and less than 24% of the population even takes part in it. Not my elected official. It's ridiculous. So yeah, it's really disturbing what's happening, and it's really unfair. And if this was a programmer, a white programmer, some of those are hotheads. People in these tech companies, they got their own problems. There's cocaine use, and there's an article in the San Jose Mercury you can look up on the various drug use issues with big tech. I could totally see that happening. Some programmers, working, 3 days in a row, and gets into a physical altercation, shoplifts or not, with the security guard, and walks away. Security guard probably wouldn't have killed them, first of all. Let's be real. Security guards, people with those kind of prejudices know that it's not in their best interest to shoot people who are white. It doesn't look very good because of the way society is structured. That's a big part of white privilege, by the way, for those that might be on the fence with that term, which I understand. There's some issues with that term sometimes. But that's part of white privilege. Like, I, going down the street, have a less chance to be shot in the back leaving a Walgreens or anywhere, simply because of the pigment of my skin. That's crazy. And that, of course, plays a role in what gets prosecuted and who's actually going to draw and discharge a firearm. Thing number 2, this person was trans. And as we've seen, sadly, very sadly, there is a huge push in this country to attack trans people. It's constant. We've seen it, coming out of Florida, especially with a lot of the homophobic legislation being passed through the legislature there. But it's here locally too. And unfortunately, our media is very poisoned right now by a lot of bigotry and homophobia. And some of that, of course, is transphobia. And why people are so upset with trans folks, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, at least, I mean, I'm not saying this is good, but if you're talking about hatred against Asian Americans, there is a weird conspiracy theory connection that has been made by a former president and a former administration that kind of explains some of that insanity. It's not okay, but there is some kind of like weird tie. You can see that people are jumping to this weird conclusion. With transphobia, I don't get it. What did trans people do to you at all? The only thing that myself as a non-trans white male has had to do sometimes, not even had to do, just choose to do it, is say my gender pronouns. He, him. Once in a while. And honestly, if I don't, no one's going to really do anything 90% of the time. Probably 95% of the time. I choose to do it, but I don't have to. That's it. Trans people don't do anything to anybody, what I can see. What, they have drag shows once in a while? Celebrate their culture and their community? So, and I guess there's this whole narrative that's being pushed. Maybe that's it. It's this whole narrative that's being pushed that they're corrupting the children, which is baloney. And I think we probably all know that that's baloney. But man, and I'll save that for another video. That's another topic. But there is a lot of hatred towards trans people right now. And there's a lot of, hatred towards people of color right now. Uh, it's bad. It's bad. The district attorney, but again, like I said, most of this video, I'm not even addressing that. I'm talking about other things here. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter this person was a person of color. It shouldn't matter this person was trans identified, but they are. It absolutely plays a factor, and it especially plays a factor in whether or not this case gets prosecuted. And that's where you see the systemic nature of racism and transphobia. If this person was white and a programmer who worked at Twitter or LinkedIn, which is down the street, like literally a few blocks away from where this killing happened, if it was somebody working there, this would have been prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Full extent. If that person, had children, right? Had lived in an apartment or whatever, right? Full extent of the law. And if this person, I think Banko Brown was reported they were homeless, right? And like we've seen with the killing, the chokehold killing in on a New York subway, which is a lynch. I mean, it's essentially a public lynching. White person, former military, chokeholds a mentally disabled person of color to the point of killing them. That's insane. I've chokeholded people before. I've gotten in fights before. Do you know how hard it is to kill somebody in a chokehold? It is really hard. Like, you have to really be trying. Insane. Totally insane. But it's part of this wider narrative where, lynching might be a strong word for people, but it's the idea of getting rid of these unsavory elements in society, right? That's the dog whistle narrative, right? It's, oh, this person was shot and killed, but it's okay because they were black, they were trans, they were homeless. You probably didn't want them around anyway, right? That's the white supremacy narrative. And we really need to challenge that because it's not okay. It's not okay. These are people with lives deserving of freedom. And let's say you did believe in all of that. Let's say you are all for prisons and public killings and all these things, right? It's still not in your interest in any way because this makes our streets unsafe. Who's to say that the bullet that entered Banko Brown wouldn't have been missed and landed in me or you if you're in San Francisco, right? Or even if it passes through them, right? Let's say they get shot here or even in the chest or whatever. Bullets can pass through people, It's not like the bullet just goes, okay, I'm going to stop here, just fall and everything's cool. Bullets pass through people. There is a thing called crossfire. I don't want to be caught in a crossfire. I don't want bullets being shot at a Walgreens for any reason. I mean, unless somebody's got a machine gun in there or whatever. Sure, but that's because they're already going to shoot bullets, right? Why would you shoot bullets at unarmed people? Ever. Ever. I don't want that. And I don't want armed security guards, at a Walgreens or a marijuana dispensary. It's ridiculous. Honestly, I don't even think they need to have them at the federal building. The federal building has these huge concrete blocks and everything and tons of armed security everywhere. It's what? You know what I mean? It's just so over the top and it's not safe. And I think we know it's not safe. So hopefully this video was helpful, just a local perspective in what's in the national conversation right now. I'm going to remove myself as a customer from Walgreens, especially after this, and especially after some of the stuff they were doing, some other bad stuff they did recently. I'm done with Walgreens. I don't care how hard it is for me to get access to my medication now. I'm gonna figure something out because I cannot support this. And I encourage you to do the same. If you shop at Walgreens, if you get medications at Walgreens, go somewhere else. There's plenty of mom and pop. There's actually some pretty cool mom and pop places in San Francisco that handle prescriptions and stuff like that. Support your local businesses. I had to switch because my insurance changed, but my insurance just changed recently. So I'm going to try switching back to the mom and pop, see what happens. But yeah, don't support Walgreens. Don't buy anything at Walgreens. Hell, half the stuff at Walgreens you can get cheaper online anyway. So, you know, or other places, dollar stores and stuff like that around here have most of the things that Walgreens has anyway. Um, Toiletries and things like that. You can get it Safeway, you can get it Lowe's, you can get other places. It's not that hard. So yeah, I'm not supporting Walgreens anymore. This is absolutely insane. This district attorney is absolutely ridiculously unqualified, and we should raise some noise and boycott Walgreens and make sure that stuff like this does not happen in our communities. My name's Zach, speaking to you as a local San Francisco resident. I don't support this kind of thing. We need to reform and disarm these security guards. This is ridiculous. Hopefully you learned something from this. Feel free to leave a comment if you did. Please keep it civil. You know, I'll just remove it if you don't. But like, you know, keep it civil, right? Let's have some discussion. You don't have to agree with me, but keep it civil. And you know, let me know if you liked videos like this. A little bit different take than what I usually do. And catch you later. Let's keep San Francisco safe for everyone.